Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into Chapter 10 of the Uprooted Chinar to really get a handle on the modern story of the Kashmiri Pandit diaspora. It's a story that's absolutely defined by a powerful paradox. You have a community that faced this immense tragedy, yet somehow achieved remarkable success, all while navigating the long and still unfinished journey home. This one line from the chapter just perfectly sums it all up. This idea of carrying the heavy weight of exile, but at the same time, radiating this unmistakable excellence. So how does that happen? How can a people who lost so much go on to achieve so much? That's really the question at the very heart of their story today. To really wrap your head around this journey, you just have to look at these two extremes. On one side, you have a family fleeing terror, ending up in a refugee camp with basically nothing. And on the other, a leader of innovation, maybe in a high-tech boardroom. The path between these 2 points, well, as Chapter 10 argues, it's more than just a change of scenery. It's a powerful testament to an incredible, almost unbelievable resilience. Okay, so let's dig into that first part of the paradox. This incredible story of achievement that has come to define the diaspora's experience while in exile. Think about it. Despite the unimaginable trauma of being uprooted, Pandits have excelled in fields that demand the absolute highest levels of intellect and discipline. We're talking about everything from space exploration and tech to groundbreaking literature and art. Their contributions really are a powerful testament to their roots. Now, what's really fascinating here is the emphasis the source material puts on why this happened. It argues this isn't some accident, and it's definitely not a story about privilege. Instead, this excellence flows directly from a centuries-old indigenous culture, a tradition of scholarship and resilience that basically armed them to adapt and to thrive, even under the worst possible conditions. And the book gives us this character, this archetype of Vijay, to make the journey feel real. And this isn't just one person's story, right? It's the story of hundreds and hundreds of young people who, surrounded by loss and hardship, used education as their way out. They literally turned the tragedy of exile into a story of excellence. But of course, this journey wasn't without some major obstacles. The source next gets into the external hurdles they faced on that long road home. Specifically, it's about failed government promises and a pretty vicious propaganda campaign designed to just erase their history. So for years, you had this series of rehabilitation packages announced with a lot of fanfare. These plans, they promised jobs, they promised housing, financial aid, the basic building blocks for a return. But, as the book points out, the results on the ground tell a very different story. And this number just perfectly illustrates that gap between words and action. By late 2021, after all those packages and all those promises, this is how many pundits had actually returned to the valley for a job under those schemes. 1,678. It's a tiny, almost negligible fraction of the hundreds of thousands who were displaced. And alongside those policy failures, the community had to fight this staggering historical inversion. This colonizer trope, as the book calls it, literally painted the indigenous victims as the villains. It was a narrative seemingly designed to justify their expulsion and to kill any sympathy for their return. But the obstacles weren't just coming from the outside. As the book details, the community also faced a really painful and complicated challenge from within its own ranks. It's a tough question, right? The book describes how the immense trauma of exile and just the sheer desperation to find a solution, it also led to fractures within the diaspora's leadership and their advocacy groups. You had these passionate leaders who formed different organizations, but they often had completely different visions for the future. Some, like Panwan Kashmir, were arguing for a totally separate, self-governed homeland just to ensure their security. And then others were focused on integrating back into the valley through rehabilitation packages and legal fights. So, and this is the crucial point the source makes, this disunity often weakened their collective voice at the very moment they needed it most. The book describes how these public rivalries and conflicting messages just made it so much harder to lobby effectively. It ended up confusing the very policymakers and potential allies they were trying to win over. For decades, the pundits' story, their story of exodus and survival, it was just met with this deafening silence across the country. Their tragedy, for so many, just remained a footnote. Just imagine, while they were enduring disease, snake bites, and even fatal heat stroke in these makeshift tents, their plight was often just seen by the rest of India as some distant, complicated border issue, not what it was, a national human rights crisis. And that indifference, the book argues, it just compounded the trauma. And then, after 32 years of being in relative obscurity, the book describes how a single cultural event, a movie, in 2022, managed to do what years and years of activism couldn't. It finally broke through that national silence. And this slide really shows the film's incredible power. By using survivor testimonies, it humanized the tragedy for millions of people who had no idea. It sparked a massive national conversation, and so crucially, it began to shift the public narrative away from this soft word migration to what the community had always called it: ethnic cleansing. So that brings us right up to today. After the abrogation of Article 370 back in 2019, the legal path for pundits to return was cleared, and it created this huge new wave of hope. But the journey, as the source makes crystal clear, is far, far from over. As the source material lays out, there's still this clear and persistent gap between the hope offered by these new policies and the difficult and often dangerous reality on the ground. Legal changes are one thing, but creating a truly secure and welcoming environment for return? That's another challenge entirely. 36 plus. That's the number of years the Kashmiri Pandits' displacement has now lasted. It's not just the story of a single generation's loss anymore. It has become a multi-generational exile, with children and even grandchildren being born and raised far away from their ancestral homeland. And so the chapter leaves us with this final, really powerful question. It highlights that while the incredible resilience of this community ensured their survival and even their success in exile, the ultimate fight for justice and for a true, dignified homecoming, well, that fight continues.